The McGill Big 3 have become some of the most popular exercises for low back pain, but they've also become some of the most badly copied. And that's a problem, because when they're done poorly, they can stop being helpful and start provoking the back pain you're trying to get rid of. So in this video, I'm going to show you why these three exercises became the McGill Big 3 in the first place, how to do them properly, the common mistakes that most people make, and then how to dose them properly. So how many sets, reps, etc. One of my clients came to me with low back pain and told me he had already been trying the McGill Method on his own, but it had been making his back pain worse. When I asked him to explain exactly what he'd been doing, it turned out he'd just been copying a badly demonstrated version of the Big 3 from the internet. During his assessment, it became clear that one of his main pain triggers was lumbar extension. When I asked him to show me how he did a bird dog, I understood why it had been making his back pain worse. With every single repetition, he put his spine into extension, the same movement that we just identified as a pain trigger. So it was no surprise it made his back pain worse. It wasn't because the Big 3 doesn't work for low back pain, it's because he wasn't doing it right. Now, before we get into the exercises themselves, there's something I'd like to clarify. The McGill Big 3 are not the same thing as the McGill Method. The McGill Method is the assessment-based approach used to identify the likely cause of your low back pain and provide you with a clear plan of action that aims to put you on a path to recovery. It involves a detailed 3-hour assessment that includes an interview to understand your personal history and any lifestyle or psychological factors that might be contributing towards your pain. Then a biomechanical assessment to identify the movements, postures and loads that provoke your pain. Then the teaching of spine hygiene so you can avoid provoking your pain in your day-to-day activities. And finally, the coaching of a personalised exercise program. This may or may not include the Big 3. The Big 3 are just 3 exercises: the bird dog, the curl up and the side plank, which together are an excellent tool to improve the stability and control of your spine, but they aren't always appropriate for absolutely everyone. This is important to understand because a lot of people talk as if the Big 3 are a complete solution for everyone with back pain. They're not. They can be very useful, especially when the goal is to improve control of the spine and endurance of the muscles that stabilise the spine, but they're still just one small part of a much bigger process. So how do these 3 exercises become the Big 3 in the first place? Professor Stuart McGill and his team at Waterloo University didn't select them randomly. They studied many core stabilisation exercises and measured both the stimulus to the muscles and the forces that the exercises imposed on the spine. They were looking for the exercises that provided the most stimulus to the muscles and least stress to the passive tissues, so the discs, ligaments and vertebrae, of the spine. The 3 exercises that were most successful in meeting these criteria have now come to be known as the McGill Big 3. The bird dog for the posterior chain, the McGill curl up for the anterior core, and the side plank for the lateral core. Exercises that may intuitively seem superior, such as the Superman, were rejected for people with low back pain due to the high stress they impose through the spine. That doesn't mean to say the Superman is a terrible exercise for everyone. It just means that if you have low back pain, the risk-reward ratio makes it a poor choice. Despite training different parts of the torso, all 3 exercises have something in common. They're performed with the spine held in a neutral position. So not flexed, not extended, not twisted, neutral. Because that's the position in which the spine best tolerates load and compression. When you create muscular stiffness around a neutral spine, the passive tissues, like the discs and ligaments, aren't subjected to as much stress. And that leads us to what these exercises are actually trying to train. The main goal initially is not to develop maximal strength. It's to improve muscular endurance. This is essential to allow you to maintain spine-sparing postures throughout the day. It allows you to stabilise your spine while you generate force with your arms and your legs, while walking, running, picking something up, or resisting rotation. If your spine stabilising muscles haven't got sufficient muscular endurance to resist motion, the discs and ligaments of your spine end up taking the brunt of the force. So, if for example you already have a sensitised disc, this will likely result in pain if you can't stabilise your spine. A good example is another client of mine who was able to swim without any pain, but after about 20 minutes of swimming, her back pain would start up. As her muscles fatigued, they were no longer able to stabilise her spine while she propelled herself along with her arms and her legs. This caused force to be redirected to the sensitised passive tissues of her spine, resulting in pain. Now we'll look at what each exercise does individually and how to avoid the most common mistakes. Let's start with the bird dog. This targets the muscles of the posterior chain and is a great example of creating proximal stability to create distal athleticism. In other words, stabilising your spine before creating force with your arms or your legs. The spine stays in a neutral position while all the movement is created in the hip and the shoulder. Okay, to set up for the bird dog, you want to make sure that your hands, or your wrists rather, are underneath your shoulders, knees underneath your hips. Okay, spine is going to be in a neutral position, so not flexed, not extended too much, just in a comfortable neutral position, and your head in line with your spine, so not flopping down, not up, just looking straight down. Okay, so from here you're going to brace your abs slightly, and then you're going to extend one leg, opposite arm at the same time, make a clenched fist to increase the tension across your upper back, and I'm going to push away from me with my heel. Now you notice that my leg is not very high. Okay, if I do this, I'm extending my spine. So your foot stays quite low. Hold this position for about 10 seconds. Also, I'm pushing myself away from the floor. Okay. After 10 seconds, just come back to the start position. Just sweep the floor gently, and then go back out for another rep. There are 6 main mistakes I see people make with the bird dog, which either make the exercise ineffective or worse, pain-provoking. The most common one I see is spinal extension. People often lift the leg too high, which forces the spine into extension. Or they lift the chest and the head, extending the spine even more. If you're extension intolerant, this will provoke your pain. Keep the foot low so you can maintain a neutral spine. The next is spinal flexion. I see a lot of people touch their knee to their elbow when they come back after each rep. This forces the spine into flexion, which is not good if you're flexion intolerant. For example, if you have a sensitised posterior disc bulge or herniation. Just come back to the starting position, which will allow you to maintain a neutral spine. Then there's a bad setup. The setup is too narrow, so the person is wobbling all over the place. If you have some instability at any joint in your spine, which is common if you have a disc bulge or damaged ligaments, this is likely to provoke your pain. Keep hands under the shoulders, knees under hips, and root yourself to the floor. If you still have problems staying stable, you can try keeping your hands on the floor and only move your legs. Then there's a collapsed shoulder. If you don't have a stable shoulder, there will be an energy leak where the shoulder collapses. This not only limits the force you can apply with your arm, but it increases stress on your spine, which is no longer sufficiently stable. If you activate the serratus anterior, protracting the shoulder blade and pushing your rib cage away from the floor, this creates a much more stable base from which you can generate force. The reps are too fast. This defeats the purpose of the exercise, which is to develop muscular endurance. If a 10-second hold is too much for you, at least aim for a few seconds per rep and build up from there to improve your endurance. Changing sides every rep. Again, this detracts from the goal of building muscular endurance. If you keep switching sides every rep, you're denying your muscles the opportunity to develop stability and build tolerance to the metabolites that are produced with consecutive contractions. Do all the reps on one side, then all the reps on the other side. I'll talk more about the specific dosage of sets and reps after we've looked at the other exercises. Next, the side plank. The side plank targets the muscles of the lateral core, such as the obliques and the quadratus lumborum, that prevent the torso from collapsing to the side. So we're going to start off doing a side plank on the knees. Okay, so you notice I've got my knees in front, my hips behind, but I'm keeping my spine straight. I'm not letting my spine flex to the side. Okay, so spine straight, hips back, the elbow is probably slightly further out from your shoulders, not directly underneath, slightly outside. Okay, from here, you're going to brace abs, and to go up, we're going to hinge at the hips. So hinging hips forward to there. Okay, then, you know, if this is challenging enough, you can hold this for about 10 seconds, and then to come back down, you're going to hinge back with the hips again. Okay, then you can repeat, do all the reps like this, or if that's too easy, then we can do the next level, which is actually the side plank on the feet. So we get up to the feet in the same way. We go to the knees first, so hinging at the hips to the knees. Top foot goes in front, bottom foot goes behind. So we separate the feet to spread the load on the spine. Okay, so we try and keep the head in line with the spine, don't let it drop down or slip forward. Keep the shoulders stacked, so again, we're not leaning forward, it's more stacked like this. Hold it for 10 seconds, you're going to feel these muscles working here. Okay, after 10 seconds, knees down first, and then hinge back again. Okay, so we're not flexing laterally to the side, we're keeping a straight spine the whole time. The most common mistake here is using lateral flexion to get in and out of position. This creates additional stress on the discs and will be a pain generator for some people. Another mistake I often see is the shoulder collapsing into the joint instead of being actively supported. It shouldn't be your shoulder that fails first. The goal is to challenge the lateral muscles of the torso. Push the floor away from you with your forearm to stop the shoulder collapsing. Head position is another one people ignore. Either letting the head drop down to the side or flop forward to the front. You don't want to create neck problems while you're trying to fix your back, so make sure you keep it in line with the spine, with your ears back and in line with your shoulders. Now the curl up. This one is probably the most misunderstood of the three because people see the name and assume it's basically a crunch. But unlike crunches, you don't flex the spine on every rep. The spine stays in a neutral position while you're contracting your abs. This provides stiffness to the front side of the torso, helping to stabilise the spine while causing minimal stress to its discs and ligaments. To set up for the curl up, we're going to lie down on your back and we want to keep the spine neutral for this exercise as well. So there's two ways we're going to do that. The first is putting your hands underneath the curve in your lumbar spine to try and maintain that curve. We're not going to flatten your spine to the floor. And the other thing we do is have one leg bent with your foot flat on the floor and the other leg straight. That stabilises the pelvis and stops us going into extension. Okay, so we're targeting the abdominal muscles here. And to make sure we use those muscles, we're going to lift the elbows off the floor. And the goal is just to lift the head and shoulders slightly off the floor, using the sternum or the breastbone as a fulcrum. Okay, so elbows off the floor, contracting the abs, and then just lifting slightly. So I can feel that I'm maintaining that lumbar curve in my spine, so I've got a neutral spine, and I can feel my abs working. It doesn't look like much, but it's enough to target your rectus abdominis. Hold it for about 10 seconds, and then back down. The most common mistake I see here is often by people who have done Pilates and want to flatten their lumbar spine to the floor. That may be fine if you don't have lower back issues, but it actually increases stress on the posterior annulus of the disc, which will keep some people in a cycle of pain. If you think about it, when you flatten your spine to the floor, you're actually doing the same thing to it as when you bend forward or slump in a chair for too long. The other mistake I see is curling up way too high, turning it into a crunch. This also flattens your back to the floor, causing the same issue I just spoke about. It can also strain your neck, which is best avoided. Some people even get neck strain doing the movement correctly. If that is the case, you can do this remedial exercise to strengthen your deep neck flexors. You put your tongue to the roof of your mouth and clench your teeth together. Then apply upward movement with your two fists under the chin while you resist the movement with your neck muscles. You can actually feel your deep neck flexors working as you're resisting. You can do 5 times 5 second holds sporadically throughout the day to strengthen these muscles. An added bonus of strengthening them is that they help counter forward head posture. So remember that the goal of these exercises is to improve the endurance of the muscles that stabilise the spine. That doesn't mean that we're going to try to hold the contractions for as long as possible, because when you do that and the muscles start to fatigue, your technique falls apart and you end up increasing stress on the passive tissues that we want to protect so they can desensitise. A better approach is to keep the hold short, usually around 10 seconds, and build capacity through repeated high quality reps. And if we structure the reps in a pyramid format, you end up being able to challenge your muscles under longer total time, always with perfect technique. This builds capacity of the muscles without stressing the discs, ligaments and vertebra, which are often the sensitised tissues that provoke your pain. A typical format is to do 6 reps, then take a 30-second break, then 4 reps, then another 30-second break, then 2 reps. So for example, with a bird dog, you do 6 reps on each side, break, 4 reps each side, break, then 2 reps each side. You then follow the same format with the curl up and the side plank. The only difference being, with the curl up, it's 6 total reps, even if you're switching which leg is bent, because you're basically targeting the same anterior abdominal muscles, whichever leg you have bent. It doesn't have to be 6-4-2 pyramid with 10 seconds per rep. You could do 5-3-1 or even increase it to 7-5-3. You can also play with a number of seconds. 10 seconds may be too challenging for you to begin with, in which case you can either regress the exercise or reduce the number of seconds per rep to 5 to begin with, then build up gradually to 10. Another factor that you also need to take into account is whether there's an asymmetry between sides. For example, I'd always test my clients' maximum side plank hold before their technique breaks down to see if there's a difference from one side to the other. If there's a difference of more than about 10%, then it should be addressed. For example, if you can do 50 seconds on your right side and 40 seconds on your left side, you should do extra reps on your weaker left side. So your pyramid might look like 7 reps left, 5 reps right, 5 reps left, 3 reps right, 3 reps left, 1 rep right. Or if there's a more significant difference, for example, you can do 70 seconds on your right and only 35 on your left, I'd get you to stop training your stronger side altogether and just do reps on your weaker left side for about 2 or 3 weeks. It's more important to address the imbalance than it is to keep improving both sides, because too big an imbalance will alter the way stress is transferred through the spine and actually increase your chance of getting injured or exacerbating your current injury. The most important thing to remember is that all the reps should be done with perfect technique. So the total volume should be adapted to the individual. In summary, the McGill Big 3 are not the whole McGill method. What they are is a very specific set of exercises chosen because they challenge the muscles that stabilise the spine whilst applying minimal stress to the spine itself. But that only holds true if you perform the exercises with correct technique. And as you can see from this video, there's a lot of nuance that isn't immediately obvious. This is also true of the McGill Method assessment, which I believe is the most thorough low back pain assessment you will find anywhere. If you want to understand more about the cause of your low back pain and how to build a plan that will put you on the path to a long-term recovery, you can watch this next video here to find out more about the McGill Method assessment.